Greetings. This is Elder Blacklight. You're in tune to the God Zone, the Soul School channel. I'm your motivator. In these times, people should be upset and angry about the government and all the misconduct in the government, all the fraudulent acts, all the corruption, the immorality, trying to legislate morality. And that's because the majority of the people are corrupt. We're living in a corrupt house, and the majority of the people are corrupt. You either join the corrupt people if they the majority, or you'll be considered as a troublemaker if you don't. And what the majority of the people operate on is the notion of being rich and collecting dollars. So we want to enter into someone that's Caucasian, that's somewhat of a whistleblower, enter into his frame of mind, what he has researched and uncovered, concerning the corruption of the government and Congress. And it has elevated since he was on the scene. Our scene where he was found, or he was murdered, or something to that effect. His name is William Cooper. Let's go there.
Is a central bank. That's right. It is a central bank. A central bank attains, ladies and gentlemen, its commanding position from its governmentally granted monopoly of the currency issue. And this is often the unsung key to its power. Invariably, private banks are prohibited from issuing notes and the privileges reserved to the central bank. Now, that's the first quote, one of 4 that I left off with yesterday. And we're going to continue from that point. We talked about the Federal Reserve being made up of 12 centrally located Federal Reserve banks in the 12 Federal Reserve regions of the United States. You learned that the Federal Reserve is a private corporation. It is not owned by the federal government. We talked about a court case where the court revealed the fact that And I will quote the court's own words, quote, "We conclude that the Federal Reserve banks are not federal instrumentalities for purposes of the FTCA or Federal Tort Claims Act, but are independent, privately owned, and locally controlled corporations," unquote. Among the findings of the court are, the banks can sue and be sued in its own name, and each carries its own liability insurance. Each bank is statutorily empowered to conduct activities without day-to-day direction from the federal government. Unlike federal agencies, each bank may hire and fire at will. Bank employees do not participate in the civil service retirement system. The banks receive no appropriated funds from the Congress. The banks pay local property taxes and postage. Federal government agencies don't, and that's one of the tip-offs to the criminal, illegal, and privately owned Federal Reserve System and its collection arm, the Internal Revenue Service. You see, if you receive a letter from the Internal Revenue Service, it will have postage on it, either in the form of regular postage stamps or metered postage. Federal government agencies don't. Mr. Lewis had sued the wrong institution. Imagine the zero contingency fee look on his lawyer's face as they discovered that suing the federal government would not get them one single penny from the Federal Reserve. Incredible, you say? Well, simply call directory assistance in any of its 12 district cities, which are Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Richmond, Atlanta, Chicago, St. Louis, Minneapolis, Kansas City, Dallas, and San Francisco, and ask if the Federal Reserve is listed under government or business. I have here in front of me the 1991 Minneapolis phone book listing, and the Federal Reserve, is listed under business just after Federal Express, which, by the way, for those of you who are really deep asleep, who are so covered with wool that you can't even reach out and touch anything, the Federal Express is not an agency of the United States government either. Even federal officials admit that, quote, "the federal government has not a dollar's worth of stock in the Federal Reserve System." That statement came from W.P.G. Harding, who was the governor of the Federal Reserve Board, and he made that statement in 1921. In a Computer World job advertisement, the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco pointed out, quote, "some people still think we're a branch of government. We're not. We're the bank's bank." The importance of the Fed being privately owned is this. Congress had no authority to grant a private consortium of banks the monopoly privilege to create out of thin air the nation's currency. Do you understand that, sheeple? Congress had no authority to grant a private consortium of banks the monopoly privilege to create out of thin air the nation's currency. First of all, Congress was never authorized by the Constitution to issue currency, only to mint constitutional gold or silver money into coin form. And second, Congress is not permitted to delegate any of its authority, especially authority it never had to begin with. That is crucial to the concept of balance of power. Andrew Jackson said this as he deals the Bank Bill of 1836, quote, "If Congress has the right, which it does not, to issue paper money, it was given to them to be used by themselves and not to be delegated to individuals or corporations," unquote. And of course, when he said to issue paper money, he meant currency. Even if the Congress was empowered to issue currency, which is a money substitute, and delegate its authority, it could not delegate such to private corporations.
Now, stay tuned for part 3. This is the cause of this pandemic. They're getting ready to elevate the corruption. Now they want us to take a COVID shot. Man, I don't trust y'all. I don't trust y'all a bit. Bill Gates said he want population control. I witness corruption in the system every day. But you got gatekeepers, boule, agent Negroes who operate on corrupt money, fraudulent money, counterfeit money. There's no power in that money. You live in luxury for a minute until they want to get rid of you. Stay tuned. More to come.